r/ask Reddit. Married men of Reddit, what was that dumb thing you did during your dating phase that you can't believe your wife ended up overlooking? Turned her down when she suggested we go on a date. Read as. I'm super awkward. I was working for Starbucks. She was a regular customer. I was new in town and noticed her a couple times. She was a regular customer and we got to some small talk. Chatting about places to eat. She said there's an amazing taco place down the road. We should go sometime. I misheard her. Thinking she said you should go sometime. I replied with I'll definitely check it out. I handed her a drink and she left very awkwardly. She was back in the next day and, against all odds, I was able to clear up the misunderstanding and I wrote my number on her Starbucks cup. We went to that taco place for our first date and she was right. It was amazing. 3 years married and 2 kids later. Really glad she saw through my awkwardness. My husband kept calling me by the name of his previous girlfriend on our first date. I finally told him to give her a call because they clearly had unfinished business to talk about. He did and she reminded him why he was happy to have her out of his life. And he never called me by her name again. 40 years later and it seems to have worked out in my favor. Not the married man but on probably our 3rd or 4th date. My man. Mixed our soups. I got a watermelon gazpacho, a cold soup, and he got a seafood bisque. I'm a sharer so we both tasted and didn't love mine but we loved his. After the tasting, he boldly yet nervously states mine is so great. I got this while pouring our 2 soups into one. It was the worst lukewarm thing I've ever tasted. 5 years later and we've never mixed soups again. Too risky. We had a couple great dates and things were looking promising. Then I got super busy at work and didn't contact her for about 3.5 weeks without giving her a heads up. She decided to move during this time. After things calmed down at work I text her again. We worked things long distance and finally got married. She reminds me that I didn't ask her out again for a very long time every few months. Accidentally set her hair on fire with a match while lighting a cigarette. Not good. We are still married 29 years later. I don't smoke anymore. Soon to be wife here. When we first met, it was during an introduction class or something like that. He kept kissing the teacher's ass and talking rah-rah too much and just being kinda of a show off. I wanted to punch him in the face. Come to find out he's in almost all my classes and for lunch a couple of girls and I decided to go to McDonald's. He invited himself. I was annoyed. 2 months into our relationship he confessed that he saw me and was intrigued and wanted to get to know me so he did everything to get my attention. He's an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I'm surprised he managed to actually get my attention. We've been together for 10 years getting married on the 23rd of September. I was sitting on the couch as we were playing Wii bowling. She was standing behind the couch, lovingly holding me. I draw back the Wiimote and wham. I whack her in the face with the Wiimote at full strength. Her mom was also in the room. We drank a lot on our second date. Ubered home. Next day went back to get his car. And it wasn't there. He was so devastated. He just bought it recently and it was stolen. We filed a police report. Took forever and just generally sucked. We walked to his friend's house nearby. And there was his car. Perfectly unstolen. He drank so much he forgot he moved it before our date. Now, once in a while when we're trying to find our car in the grocery store parking lot or wherever, one of us will say it's stolen. Call the police. Insisted that everything in San Francisco was walking distance from everything else. And decided we should walk from Pier 39 to Golden Gate Park. It is walkable. But not third date walkable. Or whatever shoes she happened to be wearing that day walkable. Wife here. About 3 weeks into dating. My husband thought it would be romantic to pick me up and spin me around in his driveway. Unfortunately, it was not his most brilliant idea and he tripped and we fell right onto the concrete next to my car. Reader. He landed on top of me. Wife here. But about 3 weeks into dating, my husband invited me to a house party at his best friend's place. We were playing beer pong having fun. The other team is up. They toss the ball. I lean forward to try to block it. My now husband extends his hand out in front of me at the same time, catching the ball but at the same time hitting me in the eye and somehow pulling out 3/4 of my eyelashes. He felt terrible about it and tried to burn off his eyelashes in drunken sympathy. He hates when I bring it up, but I think it is the funniest story. I forgot her name once when introducing her to a friend. This was maybe a month into our relationship. I was all like, "Hey, and by the way, this is my girlfriend." 5 years ago, after dating for 2 weeks, I accepted a job offer on another continent. I told her we didn't know each other well enough for me to pass up an opportunity like that, and if it was meant to be, it would work itself out. Well, it was meant to be, and we got married this spring. Edit. Added some more story to a comment below. We were taking a shower together and she was soaping up while I was under the hot water rinsing off, and she slipped, and instead of helping her, I pulled away, thinking for some reason that I'd already rinsed off and didn't want to get soapy. Thank God she caught herself on the shower curtain and didn't get hurt. She was not happy. My explanation of my faulty thinking didn't help at all either. We laugh about it now, but it took some serious smoothing over at the time. I can tell you for him, we were leaving his new apartment. Keep in mind we've been dating for a short amount of time. We haven't been through a lot of firsts yet. His apartment was on the back of the building, so we had to walk through a small passage to get to the other side in order to leave. Imagine this passage is slightly shadowed, but the light shoots through it, so it creates this romantic silhouette. As we left his apartment and walked into this passage area, he grabs my hand and pulls me towards himself. I'm thinking, oh, he is going to put my hand around his waist. How romantic. Locks my hand on his butt and loudly farts. It was a very brave move for a new couple. We've been married for 13 years now. She was about to sneeze and she was sitting half on my lap, so I kinda thought she was gonna sneeze on me, and I DK what I was thinking, but I put my hand up to block her sneeze, except I had a glass in my hand and I blocked her own hand from covering her sneeze, and instead she slammed her face into my glass. Married 6 years now. She still has all her teeth. My uncle didn't call his now wife for over a year after they first met, and he got her number. He kept the paper she wrote it on and ended up finding it and calling her, asking if she still remembered him and was still interested in going on a date. I know what my husband would say, because I still tease him to this day. We had been dating for 2 weeks and were spooning on his futon, watching a movie. Out of nowhere he says, "I'm really sorry. I can't hold it in anymore," and rips a huge fart. My husband was a very clean, tight-knit, prudish kind of guy, so I couldn't help but let out the biggest laugh while he turned about as red as his beard. I had just started a job working with her, and, unbeknownst to me at the time, her mom and I did not get along. My move was, "What's up with that thick bitch? Insert name." She said, "Oh, I'll tell my mom you said hi." I was dead. But hey, here's we are married 16 years, so. Little late to the party, but here's my story. When we had only been dating a month or so, my then boyfriend went to pick me up, I assume, and accidentally threw my head through the ceiling and gave me a concussion. He's 6 feet 8 inches and just really misjudged the distance. I also had a hard time getting used to his height and very regularly kneed him in the balls for about 2 years while cuddling, so I think we're even. We've been together 6 years now, and proud to say we haven't injured each other in about 4. It wasn't until after we were married that my wife told me that I almost didn't get a second date because I talked too much during the movie. I don't really remember it, but apparently I was leaning over every 30 seconds or so to tell her what I was thinking. Also, Valkyrie with Tom Cruise probably wasn't that great of a date movie, but it all worked out in the end. Eater, please forgive me my movie talking sins. Everybody. I was a dumb teenager and she's really pretty. I was just quite anxious for things to go well. First date with my wife. End of the night I went to kiss her on the cheek, being all sweet and shit. She thought I was leaning in for a hug and leaned in too. As she leaned in, I turned my head and instead of her cheek I kissed her neck. Turned super red and embarrassed, then goodbye, and almost pushed her out of the door at my apartment. I immediately texted her sorry as well and she laughed. 3 years into marriage she apparently didn't care. I get very nervous around women that are into me, and especially when I know she's watching me do something. Even something trivial. On an early date, we went to the local shop to pick up some things for a picnic, including some gum. I was thinking really hard and aware that I was being watched. I had this. Money on the counter. Gum in your mouth. Money on the counter. Gum in your mouth. Easy. Suffice to say, when I put the gum on the counter and the €2 coin in my mouth, the cashier was baffled and my girlfriend, now wife, was crying with laughter. On our first dinner date, my husband ordered a shit ton of food to show me his favorites at an Indian restaurant and forgot his wallet at home, and only discovered doing so when the check had arrived. Cleared me out well over $100 and he was absolutely mortified. But we've been married for near 2 years, so I didn't ask her for her number the first time we hung out, knowing I may never see her again. My brother got it and I later got it from him. Edit. A number of people asked why. So here's why. A friend of mine, a girl who was a social butterfly, had met her at a party and brought her over to my place. I lived there with my brother and a friend. We were watching the movie Goodfellas when they arrived. I had seen the movie a few times before, so I ended up going to sleep before it was over. I had to work early the next day and it was already pushing 1 AM. I found out later that my brother was being a bro, because he did it thinking about me, and my wife wasn't really interested in my brother in that regard. She had an Xbox and staying the night. She woke up to me playing some arcade hockey game and providing commentary of goal. When we were dating, my husband and I were holding hands when he had to cough. Instead of letting go of my hand and covering his mouth, he continued to hold on, brought it up to his mouth and coughed into my hand. It was a dry cough. If it was anything more, I would have run. Edit. He had to cough, not we. Ugh. I decided to not shave for a few months since I was going to be serving in the jungles of Ecuador and wanted to be a wild man. As it turns out, a thick, blonde neck that isn't very attractive. Everything. Just really everything. Our first kiss is the one that sticks out in my mind. We kissed, and right as we kissed, some air moves in my throat. Sounded like a burp, but it wasn't. It seemed like I burped right into her mouth and I was mortified. She now knows it wasn't a burp, but at the time, not so much. I'm such a lucky fool and had some big blunders early while learning who I am and who she is. I'm lucky someone so wonderful saw past the stupid young person I was. Edit. Thanks for the silver kind person. Robot. Alien. Whoever, whatever you may be. May today be a glorious day. We met our first day of high school, so there are many. My least, her family's, favorite is when I left her messages. This was before cell phones and her parents owned a business. They set their voicemail in a business manner in that you dial 1 for father, 2 for mother, and so on. I found out later it was practice for their office line and that this line went to the same recording, no matter what. I left so many messages of call me ramblings. They were on vacation. Her 4 siblings and her parents listened to it all on speaker in a van. We kept it secret for years. Until we didn't. It's never stopped. I got fairly intoxicated and decided to tie a towel around my shoulders while completely naked and run in front of her on FaceTime screaming, "Look at my dangle." Edit. She has informed me I am mistaken. I was wearing a shirt but no pants or underwear, and it was a blanket, not a towel. When I kneeled to propose, I landed on a sharp rock and we had to go to the ER because it lodged in my kneecap. Edit. Row. Did not expect this to get so many upvotes. My wife demands I make a minor correction to adequately embarrass myself. She said that I can't tell the story and leave out her absolute favorite detail. Because of the kneecap situation. I forgot to actually ask. She thought I got nervous and froze up and decided to save me by just saying yes. She also stopped me from pulling the rock out of my kneecap with my trusty Leatherman, which turned out to be the correct decision. She was a little bummed that I wasn't simply choked with emotion. But the situation as a whole is, now, a very fond memory. Side note. Driving a manual transmission with a rock sticking out of one's kneecap is not super fun. transitioning from that uncomfortable to the comfortable phase. I was sitting across the room while she did homework. I farted pretty loudly and she looked me in the eyes and fired back. Luckily I had another in the chamber and asserted my dominance. To my surprise, which she matched for a second time. But even louder. Having this all happen in a span of 2 seconds and thinking it was pretty funny. I tried to top her by forcing one more out to reign supreme. Well, let's just say it wasn't a fart I forced out. One of her favorite stories to tell close friends and family. We've been married for going on 4 years though. So I'll guess it all worked out for me. TLDR. Shit yourself in front of potential mates if you wanna get married. Not my story. But my parents. Some backstory. My dad has a brother who's only a couple years older. Growing up, they'd commonly try to steal food off each other's plates just to be assholes to each other. This was remedied by plate guarding and defensive maneuvers with utensils if hands got too close. On my parents' first date, my mom reached for something to try off my dad's plate and he instinctively stabbed her hand with his fork, drew blood and everything. He was obviously mortified, glad my mom was crazy enough to keep dating, marry, and procreate with a fork stabber. The night I met my husband, he stared at me while I was sleeping. For 4 hours straight. It's been 3 years. He still stares at me until I scold him for it. Then he waits until he thinks I won't notice and starts staring again. I love him to the moon and back. Even though he'd sure as hell stare at me the entire trip. I once spear tackled my then girlfriend out of misplaced enthusiasm in high school. I was excited to see her and handled it as badly as was possible. It was in front of a bunch of our friends and I ended up knocking the wind out of her and making her cry. That was about 17 years ago. And we're still together. I also licked my plate at a fancy restaurant because the salad dressing was so good. She still brings that one up every few years. Edit. My most upvoted comment ever is me recounting my most shameful relationship fails. The internet is weird. Plate lickers unite. In college I got a pretty severe bronchial infection. I had a fever of 103 and felt pretty useless. My boyfriend, now husband of 12 years, says he is going to go rent some movies from Blockbuster and come back so we can just chill for the weekend while I'm resting. Blockbuster was a 5-minute drive from our apartment. An hour goes by and he's not back. I call his cell phone and he doesn't answer. Another hour goes by and I call again. No answer. 2 more hours go by. I'm blowing up his cell phone and terrified that he got in an accident and I have no way of going out to look for him. An hour later, 5 hours after he left, he calls me and says he's on his way home. He went to a friend's house to help him rebuild the engine in his car. It took a long time for me to not be pissed at him. And I still get mad thinking about it. Told my then boyfriend at the time that I wanted to have sex for the first time and he made me wait until his Magic the Gathering tournament was over. I wore jorts on the first date. We were in her bed an hour later. I'm the wife. Probably a year into us dating we fought about something neither of us can remember now. To make up for it he went and bought us both dessert, which was a sweet gesture. Of course he went and did it right after dinner. So I was still full and said I would shower and eat it when I finished my shower. Well, when I was in the shower he decided for some godforsaken reason to eat the dessert he bought for me, after eating his own serving of it. Everyone who has heard the story is very surprised our relationship lasted after that night. I did bring it up in my vows as an example of how I'll love him even when it's not the easiest thing to do. He flicked a dime at her head. We were playing table football. Not sure what I was thinking. She has a scar. I kiss it every night before we go to bed. We are married and have 3 kids. Edit. Thanks for the silver and all the upvotes. First time. My husband told me on our first date, just so you know, if we ever have a son, he needs to be named after me. I'm the 5th and I could never break the tradition. I thought it was a super weird thing to say on a first date. But thankfully I decided to overlook that red flag. 14 years later our son, named after him, just turned 3. We were making out in her dorm. I was on top and I shit my pants. Day after the second date. I was in a shitty financial situation. My power got turned off and I was distraught. She came over, brought takeout. We ate dinner, hung out and just talked until it was too dark to see. Then we went to bed. Mind you, this bed was a cobbled together full-size mattress resting on a queen frame box. And she didn't bat an eye. Not once has she cared about what I had. Only who I am. Been married since March. Edit. My first ever silver. Thank you. Edit. Gold. You kind soul. Also, I told her and she corrected my memory of it. That night she got us a pizza and we went out and sat in a parking lot and ate it and talked until it was dark. Mind like a steel trap. Played Weird Al CDs non-stop for a 6-hour car trip to the beach. She didn't ditch me but haven't been allowed to play Weird Al in her presence for the past 24 years. Got tickets to see him this year on our anniversary and knew better than to ask her to join me, so I took a couple of my kids that appreciate the finer things in life. Best anniversary gift ever. Great show. My husband and I were dating while I was studying for the Texas bar exam. I spent an entire summer practicing multiple choice questions. 8-10 hours a day. I made each question into a flashcard. There were literally thousands stacked up in my room. Cut 2. About 3 AM on a Friday. We had gotten wasted off of cheap whiskey. So this dude I'm dating gets out of my bed, walks his drunk ass over to the corner of my bedroom, and pisses all over my bar flashcards. I was so mad I couldn't even be mad. We're happily married with 2 little kids now. And I passed the bar exam. Just a setup here. She just graduated as an optometrist. I'm still getting my prerequisites finished to get into med school and had been dating maybe 3 months. So in my book she's out of my league. She asked to make me a candlelight dinner of my favorite meal. Spaghetti and meat sauce. Now keep in mind at the time I'm in grad school living really cheap. A prego and shredded cheese guy. So I head over and she went the whole 9 yards. A real setup with nice music and a white tablecloth. Take my first bite and I must have made a face because she asked what was wrong. She had cooked the noodles al dente, which is something I'd never experienced. She asked if I wanted her to make something else for me instead and I said no, it's okay, I had a couple hot dogs before I came over just in case I didn't like what she made. Been married 20 years. To this day IDKWTF I was thinking. Nor can I believe she overlooked that. My dad stalked my mom. They worked at a business together and he had a huge crush on her. He would sniff her coat when no one was looking, overhear conversations to learn what she liked and stare at her constantly while she worked at her desk. It worked out of course. Because plot twist, my mom stalked him right back. Having on separate occasions followed him home and tried to find out places he liked to hang out. They have been married for almost 35 years and they are the happiest couple I know. Wow, this blew up more than I thought it would. I guess that whole Yandir thing makes people love drama like this. To answer some popular questions. No. It's not like a weird anime. Maybe. With some details I left out. I guess I made it sound that way. But they are very much in love and happy. Do I find it creepy? Yes. But I was the outcome. So I think it turned out great. And am I stalker myself? I will admit. Yes. During my high shook years I did, in less odd ways, stalk about 2 crushes and no. They did not like me back. Had a panic attack at a restaurant and walked out leaving her with the tab. Years later we have a kid now. Guess I'm doing something right. Posted this before. Not married but engaged. Hit her finger with a hammer 3 times in a short period. Ran over her foot. Apparently choked her while I was asleep. I maintain I was dreaming she was falling and I reached out to catch her. We are still together. Happily. After these failed assassination attempts. Alrighty OP. What did you do? On our actual first date I brought my best friend. For our second date I had invited her out with myself and some friends to celebrate a friend getting a job. I drank heavily. She was my DD. She drove me home and as she pulled up to the curb I threw open the door, rolled out of the car, and vomited into the gutter. She then offered to help me cross the street. To which I responded by yelling I'm disgusting and sprinting across the street. Once inside, I brushed my teeth aggressively. She asked what I was doing and I told her I needed to clean my mouth so I could kiss her. After I was done, I walked to my room, laid down, and immediately fell asleep. She spent the night to make sure I was okay. I'm now holding our baby girl who was born just last week. I asked her at one point why she stayed with me through that and she said it was because even though I was pissed drunk, the whole time I was still gentle and kind. Asked her if she was having fun, and introduced her to everyone I knew. I'm a lucky guy. Edit. Till that brushing your teeth after vomiting is bad. Child of dolt here. My parents were getting pretty close to the engagement step when my mom broke her foot. My dad's friends were having a house party and even though my mom was tired, limited, and in pain, she agreed to go with him on the condition they'd leave when she wanted and that my dad would keep himself sober enough to drive back. Well, dad got too into the party, drank more than he should have, and brushed off my mom's first request to leave. Mom had to tell him she'd drive herself home and leave him there unless he pulled himself away from his friends and left with her. Dad finally said his goodbyes, but he was proper sloshed so they had to wait a bit longer so my dad could drink water and hopefully sober up enough. Nope. Mom had to drive the both of them home. Dad slept passed out on the couch that night, and my mom was pretty much ready to dump him. Somehow, they worked things out and they got married a few months later. My mom hasn't totally gotten over it, but she's overlooked it enough to only bring up her boxed rage whenever my dad tells the I am so lucky she married me after that story. I donated plasma to pay for our dates. Luckily, she thought it was funny that I was prostituting my body so I could be with her, but she could have laughed at my broke 23-year-old self and dated a man with money. On my first date with my wife, we got to talking about tattoos. I have a rule that if I have an idea for a tattoo, I sit on it for a while to see if I really would still want it. I mentioned this to her and explained how glad I am that I do this because otherwise I'd be covered in Tool, the band, tattoos or some other dumb shit. She rolled up her sleeve to show me that she had the lyrics to one of their songs tattooed across her arm. Edit. The lyrics are all this pain is an illusion from Parabola. For the record, I don't really hate Tool. I just used to be super into them in high school and have since grown out of them. I still put them on once in a while. Edit 2. My oldest brother unironically has a Creed tattoo on his leg. There's always somebody out there who has it worse than you. I ate the last bit of food on his plate. You know, the one you leave for last because it will be the perfect ending of your meal? The one you pretty much wait since the beginning of the meal? Exactly that one. I stole it from his plate. Edit. Wow peeps. My most upvoted post. Bit of backstory. It was our third date, and our first time out for dinner. I honestly though the date was a huge fail. And that's because he spent a good 45 minutes on the phone, emergency at work, leaving me inside, alone, staring at the ceiling. When he got back in, he only talked about his work and how he had to be available pretty much 24/8 a day. To me that sounded like an excuse. So I had a look at his plate and I noticed that last, delicious, bit. And that's when I thought, well, fuck it. At least I'll ruin his night as he ruined mine, so yeah. It was definitely intentional. That was 12 years ago. We were sitting at movie theater when movie got over. She said wanna mess around, said sure was winter, took her to old parking lot and proceeded to do donuts with car. She was pure white as a ghost and her eyes almost poked out of her head. She then screams, you fucking idiot, I meant fool around sexually lol. We'll be married 18 years in few months. Now she specifically spells out when she want to fool around and not car wise. My wife and I have a 12-year gap between us and I am hitting the age where everything is falling apart. As a joke for Halloween about 2 years ago I decided to shave my head and go as Kingpin to a local Halloween party. Knocked it out the park. Everyone loved it. She made an offhand comment that she would divorce me if my hair didn't grow back. Guess what happened? Yeah, it didn't. My wife and I always did the your face is a where the blank is whatever the current conversation topic was. Driving through a part of town we don't normally visit. She looks over and says, "Wow. Those houses are huge." Before thinking, I retorted, "You're a huge." We stared at each other for a few seconds while I processed my mistake. Knowing I couldn't go back, I finished saying house. She laughed at me for a good 5 minutes. That was 4 years ago. And our 1-year wedding anniversary is next month. Not married but pretty serious LTR. Didn't realize that in one of my Tinder pics I was clearly wearing a wedding ring. Really? I was divorced when I was on Tinder and had used an old picture and the ring didn't even occur to me. She asked me about it and I explained. And I'm amazed that one, she actually asked instead of immediately swiping left when she saw the ring. And 2, she accepted my explanation when I would have expected any woman to say yeah sure. Both into rough sex. She was on top riding. I attempted to push her backwards off me to put her legs behind her head. Misjudged how much force was needed to accomplish this and pushed her into the wall, almost giving her a concussion and denting the wall slightly. Married my HS sweetheart. Been together 3 years now. Asked her out via text. I was a shy teen. Started it with the phrase, "Would you say we have a mutual attraction?" Second best question I ever asked her. Edit. The best question I asked her was, "Will you marry me?" Cheesy as hell. But here we are. We were both 18. I didn't have a job at the time. Met on a dating website. We went out to a coffee shop for first date. I told my mom about it. So she gave me $5. When we went to order, I told her, "You can get what you want." My mom gave me $5. She looked at me funny. Said that's okay. To get what I wanted she can pay her own thing. Proceeded to spill chocolate milk down my shirt. Been married for 15 years to her. D. When my wife and I met on Hinge we started talking a lot through text. I was in Hawaii on vacation at the time but we had matched before I left. I didn't know this happened until we started dating a year later, but I was apparently highly intoxicated one night and sent her a meme that I thought was hilarious and was a good idea. It was the band Geek meme and it said "tattoo teardrops of my dick because it straight up murders bitches." I had no clue I ever sent that until she told me after our 3rd date. I couldn't believe she ever went out with me after sending that. Going on 5 months of being married and she's the love of my life. Not married or the man, but the first time my boyfriend and I had sex, I was really nervous. I went into the bathroom to hype myself up and when I came out, I thought I was being sexy and climbed on top of him. Pushed him back and accidentally smacked his head really hard into the table. It bounced. I was mortified. On our 2nd date, I arrived 1h late. When I went to greet her with a little hug, yep. That's how we greet people around here. I accidentally knocked her phone off her hand. It hit the ground and cracked the screen. But I wasn't sure if it was already cracked. I apologized. She said it was okay and that the screen was already like that before. Almost a year later she confessed that I actually broke her phone that day. She had just gotten it from her mom. All phones she ever had were second hand. Very simple ones, and she couldn't afford a new one at the time. But still she lied and kept using the broken phone so I wouldn't feel bad. My heart sank. We've been married for 2 years now and I've given her a brand new flagship phone every year ever since. Wife was a devout animal lover and activist. Planned proposal at a fancy Tokyo restaurant that only takes 3 tables a night and has 11 courses. Which was filled with all sorts of innovative things so you're never quite sure what's coming next. In between one of the courses the chef brings out a cute little glass bowl for us to play with some squid. The chef informs us these are firefly squid that's local to the bay. My wife is delighted and practically named them. 2 courses later they reappeared. As entrees. Floating on a glass plate lit up from below and arranged to look like they're swimming. She still said yes but have never let me forget that I took her on literally the worst dining experience she had. And I had paid the most ever for. My husband broke my thumb one night when we were slightly tipsy. Horseplay got too rough and I think, drunk memory, he slammed my hand against something. We both heard the pop and I went to tears. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for daily awesome videos. Feel free to like the video if you love it, and comment down below for suggestions on the next video.